Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today when ASEAN is just about to turn 50 in 4 days' time. And it is an even greater pleasure to see a number of young people from the ASEAN member countries being present at this meeting. I've been asked to look back the last 50 years, perhaps to assess the achievements and progress of ASEAN. But I think more importantly, I've also been asked to look beyond or look ahead and look to the future as to what ASEAN should be. It has always been a very difficult task to assess the achievements or success of ASEAN. Ever since I began my political career about 25 years ago, among the young parliamentarians in ASEAN, we used to have an annual debate. And that was whether the ASEAN way was working. There will be many of us who would argue that the ASEAN way was the only way to make progress in this region, given the diversity of the member countries, given our culture. And there would also be many of us who were always arguing that the ASEAN way wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't systematic enough to achieve what ASEAN could achieve. Well, in a way, it's odd that 25 years on, I still struggle to choose which side I should be on. Because when we look back the last 50 years, there is a lot that ASEAN could be proud of. If we think back to the state of the region 50 years ago, there were conflicts of ideological kinds. There were even wars being fought within the region. And the founders of ASEAN actually had a very specific aim of establishing ASEAN. And that was really to allow the founding members to be able to avoid the spreading of wars and conflicts and get on with their domestic agenda of economic development in a peaceful and successful way. Now, if you judge the achievements of ASEAN using that as a standard to measure its success, there could be no argument. ASEAN has more than outperformed in that sense. Not only was the threat of communism contained, and if you remember, Thailand was actually supposed to be the next domino to fall, but eventually all 10 countries within the region became members of the association. If we discount Timor-Leste, we could say all the countries in the region are now members of the association. And I do expect Timor-Leste to become a member soon. But more than that, the 10 countries then forged ahead with a number of cooperations, beginning with the ASEAN Free Trade Area, and most recently, of course, the establishment of the ASEAN Community, with the 3 key pillars: political security, economic, and socio-cultural pillars. And more than that, ASEAN has also been able to deepen its relations with the key dialogue partners. Even during the time of the global financial crisis, 2008, 2009, ASEAN actually pushed ahead and completed free trade agreements with all 6 dialogue partners at the time. That's China, Japan, Korea, India, Australia, and New Zealand. And ASEAN has also become a platform for a number of significant global meetings. So we have the East Asia Summit, which now not only includes the 6 dialogue partners I've mentioned, but also the United States and Russia. ASEAN also holds the ASEAN Regional Forum, a security forum that has great significance for global security, and the term ASEAN Centrality has been adopted to show what ASEAN can actually provide the global community in terms of having this platform for discussions on significant global issues. One of the things that I would like to tell you just before I left office as Prime Minister, which reflected how far ASEAN had come, was when I attended the Asia-Europe meeting, the ASEAN meeting in Brussels. Now, for so long, ASEAN has been criticized, particularly by the West, for not being ambitious, for not being able to achieve the level of integration that the European Union and other integration arrangements in other regions have done. And it used, of course, to be a joke that at ASEAN meetings, all the leaders ever did were play golf, eat some durians, and shake hands in funny ways. But I recall in 2011 in Brussels that there were a number of European leaders who came up to me and expressed an interest in joining the East Asia Summit. To which my reply was, it does take a bit of imagination to include Europe as part of East Asia, but we were nevertheless happy to engage. So these are the successes, the positives over the last 50 years. But then there is the other side of the coin. And that is, of course, over the last 50 years, the world has moved on considerably. And despite all that I've said up to now, it would be very hard to argue that as an arrangement for regional integration, ASEAN is as or more advanced than other regions in the world. We have to qualify a number of successes that I've mentioned. So for instance, we talked about the successful completion of the ASEAN Free Trade Area. And yet, the numbers will tell you that so many ASEAN businesses do not yet take up the benefits or the privileges provided by the agreements. And if you look at the economic statistics, the proportion of intra-ASEAN trade, intra-ASEAN investment, these figures are very, very low compared to other regional economic cooperations around the world, which suggests that there is so much more to be done. One of the things that I try to do, of course, after we established the ASEAN community, was to make sure that we prioritize this idea of connectivity. Because only with physical connectivity, harmonization of laws and regulations, and of course more people-to-people contacts, can we really reap the full benefits of a free trade area or an economic community. But there are also a number of concerns, other concerns that are being expressed about how ASEAN is still going about its business. I believe this weekend there will be a significant ASEAN and ASEAN-related meeting, particularly on security issues. And our friends from all over the world continue to express disappointment at ASEAN's role in trying to resolve the problems in the South China Seas, for instance. So, as we look ahead, we have also to look back to try to learn the lessons from ASEAN's success and also some of its failures, and also perhaps trying to learn from other regions like the European Union's experience. And for me, as ASEAN takes the next step, whether it will succeed in deepening integration or play a more significant role in the global community will basically depend on one crucial factor. And that is whether ASEAN finally becomes a true community. Not just in name, which means that it has to be a community where the ASEAN citizens feel that they have a common destiny or common values. This is what has been missing over the last 50 years. And as we try to advance the integration program, we learn more and more that without this sense of common destiny, without common values, we will struggle to make further progress. Just to give you a few examples, when I mentioned the connectivity agenda, all the technical knowledge is there. We have so many plans or master plans on how we should link up in terms of roads, rail, energy grid, telecommunications, and so on. And yet, over the last 6 years, since connectivity was first talked about at the ASEAN level, we do not see individual member governments prioritize these projects or see these projects as ASEAN related. Indeed, in the last few years, the idea of connectivity is now much more related to the Chinese One Belt, One Road initiative. This is one example. Just look at what has happened recently in Thailand concerning foreign labor. We have about 6 million guest workers here in Thailand. That's almost 10% of our population. We are, like Singapore, becoming an aging society very rapidly. So in fact, economies like Thailand suffer from labor shortage. Well, the idea of having an economic community is, of course, to allow greater freedom of movement of people. And yet, here in Thailand, as we saw very recently, there is no mindset among policymakers about how we should be welcoming or integrating guest workers into our society. So, if you follow what happened here, there was a great confusion and chaos following the executive decree to increase the penalties of illegal foreign workers here in Thailand. Which is why, for me, the next step of integration will have to engage the rest of society much, much more. The easy part has been done. When you reduce tariffs, when you open up trade, there may be some opposition, but it's not too difficult because it's something that individual governments can almost undertake unilaterally, not even having to go through parliament. But when you want to truly integrate into a single market, when you want to allow greater freedom of movement, whether it's for capital, business, and particularly labor and people, this will have to become part of your own domestic legislative agenda, and therefore fundamentally involves the domestic political process. The failure of the progress of a number of projects key to this connectivity concept is precisely because none of the governments had this sense of the projects being of significance as far as regional integration or the ASEAN community is concerned. During my government, we initiated the idea of negotiating with China so that we would have high-speed rail from southern China right through to Singapore. Well, since then, the portion that goes through Laos is a matter between China and Laos to negotiate bilaterally. The portion running from Singapore to Malaysia is a matter between the Singaporean and the Malaysian governments. And now here in Thailand, apparently we're building 3.5 kilometers of maybe medium speed rail from nowhere to nowhere. How are we going to advance the idea of a single community if this is the mindset of policymakers? And inevitably, as we learn from the European Union, unless other sectors in society are involved, you will not have a community in the true sense of the word. And ASEAN, the last 50 years, with all its achievements, have really been achievements driven by government leaders and bureaucrats. Even the business sector has not had much of an input as it should have. But what about the other sectors of society? I recall during my chairmanship of ASEAN, one of the initiatives that we had undertaken was that during the summit meeting, leaders should have some time set aside to meet with parliamentarians, to meet with representatives of youth, and to meet with representatives of civil society or non-governmental organizations. Unfortunately, even during my chairmanship, one of the leaders actually objected to this because he was not satisfied with the representative from the civil society from his country. He wanted to pick his own representative from the NGO sector. In the end, there was a bit of a compromise. We went ahead with that, but by the time next year came, this initiative was scrapped. And we are back to bureaucrats and government leaders driving ASEAN forward. And not even with a single voice. Because I also recall that when we had the ASEAN Plus meetings, whether it's ASEAN China, ASEAN Japan, we didn't have an ASEAN statement and a partner statement, whether it's Chinese or Japanese, Korean. We had to have 10 individual statements from the member countries. This is where things have to change before ASEAN can take that giant next step towards becoming a true community. And to do that, and to achieve that, what we have to discover are what we would call ASEAN values, common values, and also creating this sense of common destiny. At the moment, at best, ASEAN people, that is ASEAN citizens, are only aware of ASEAN. There is still little sense of belonging to ASEAN or belonging to the ASEAN community. That needs to be actively created. And we can only do so by allowing greater participation of people in the ASEAN process. And that's not an easy task, given what I call the democracy deficit within each ASEAN member country and also within ASEAN itself. And there can be no escape from facing up to this huge challenge if we want to make further progress. If we learn anything from the European Union and see its recent success and failure, we will discover precisely this crucial factor that I've been talking about that can explain the success and failure of the European Union in recent times. The EU was able to survive the financial crisis hitting countries like Greece and others, despite the fact that with the common currency, the Greeks have to suffer almost an unprecedented level where government expenditures have to be cut by almost half. Taxpayers in Germany and other countries have to actually pay to keep financial institutions alive in other countries. But they went through with it because they felt that being part of the European Union was valuable enough. That the European Union had created value and values that they are proud to represent and defend. So the European Union came through that crisis, keeping the Union together. And then Brexit happened. Britain wasn't and isn't going through an economic or financial crisis in the sense that the Greeks and others were going through. But the British people, or at least a little over half of the British people, never felt they belonged to Europe. Were fed up with the unaccountability of the European bureaucracy. These are the key lessons for ASEAN. We can advance whatever integration program we like, but if our people don't feel they belong to the community, if one day they felt that the changes affecting their country coming from ASEAN were being dictated by bureaucrats and leaders who are unaccountable, they will begin to question the value of belonging to ASEAN. So my message today is very simple. The big challenge now is how we engage the ASEAN citizens into the ASEAN process. To find the commonality in terms of values and destiny so that we can drive the integration process forward. And I'm sure a number of young people here will recognize that this is absolutely necessary. There is no way that individual member countries of ASEAN can hope to compete in a globalized world unless we advance the integration program. But that can only happen with full engagement and participation of all people. So I am so glad to see that we have a number of young people, we have academicians, we have businesses being involved today, but we will have to do much, much more. So that maybe 50 years from today, we can celebrate a century for ASEAN when it has turned into a true community for all the ASEAN people. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, CAP MCs. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry the room is a bit packed and overflowing. There's a fire hazard here around the doors, but don't tell anyone. Mr. Former Prime Minister Abhisit, that was a brilliant, lucid, in-depth, forward-looking speech drawn from personal insights and experience, so thank you very much. We have about 15 minutes. I wanted to do a Q&A session, and I think this is where the best part will be. You notice that he spoke without notes, and he can actually teach a course on ASEAN easily. We also pressed him on time. We put up a note and say, look, finish by 10:15, and you can kind of tell he can stretch it longer, shorter, compact version. So I think we had just the right version on ASEAN. Looking back, looking forward, this is an ASEAN's 50th anniversary. It's a big milestone, Golden Jubilee. There are similar speeches and papers being written, published, op-eds all around the region. And I've been engaged in a few, in Korea a few. So the floor is open. Thailand will chair ASEAN in 2 years. I think this is one theme that we could touch on. If you were to return, or if you could give advice to the government at that time, a year and a half from now, what would you say? I'll leave that on the table. Any questions, comments?
Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister. Very good speech delivered by you. My name is Harwino Nanda from Universitas Indonesia, and I would like to ask some question. Like, as you know, mostly of ASEAN countries depends on their agricultural sectors to accelerate economic development. And related to the future, like you said about the connectivity, is with the large size of ASEAN community, what do you suggest as the most efficient way to empower farmers in rural areas for the most to use technology like internet as their daily basis and help them increase their prosperity? Thank you very much.
Currently, I think there is a need to rethink economic policies and economic development models. We find more and more that aggregate economic indicators no longer relate to the ordinary lives of people. And nowhere is that felt more acutely than in the agricultural sector. And you rightly point out that in a number of member countries, farmers and the agricultural sector almost provide the backbone of society, even if value in terms of portion of GDP may not be. The point is, public policy process needs to address specific issues of the agricultural sector. How to improve productivity, competitiveness, how to take advantage of new marketing channels, how to respond to the global challenges, whether it's food security, whether it's climate change, and also, of course, greater consciousness about healthy style of living. These should be the focus of policymakers. And at the ASEAN level, I think it does make sense for ASEAN to think about initiatives at the regional level to address some of these issues. And more than that, of course, it means that when we formulate rules about the ASEAN economic community, we shouldn't just follow the usual model of no tariffs, of relaxing regulations on investment and so on, but also address specifically issues like quality, standards, and how to make the agricultural sector in the region more competitive and also getting a fair deal from economic development in the region.
My name is Sirik Laksana Korman. I work for as you know, I work for the Anti-Corruption Commission. And I feel that the governance infrastructure in ASEAN is very fragmented. Even the definition of corruption is different in each country. I know that you were one of the architects of the anti-corruption law in Thailand, and I feel that we haven't made much progress in this area. Even not only the definition of corruption, but let alone more difficult aspects like money laundering or extradition. I think ASEAN needs to go a long way in constructing an appropriate structure. And I would like to hear your views on how ASEAN should go ahead in this area. Thank you.
I would say this, we cannot make progress on this unless we remove the so-called non-interference principle. One of the problems over the last 50 years has been this great reluctance of ASEAN member countries to speak frankly about what needs to be fixed in what would be seen as domestic political affairs. To be fair to ASEAN, we didn't ignore these issues. And I also agree that we do not need to adopt the same method like Western countries. So one of the things I always pointed out was when we dealt with the situation in Myanmar, it was handled in an ASEAN way, but it was handled. And I think ASEAN made significant contributions to Myanmar's democratization process. But we need to be prepared and be willing to speak out more among ourselves. I know here in Thailand, we can no longer lecture about democracy to our neighbors. But we do need to raise these issues. And just to give you an example, again, during our chairmanship, we set up the ASEAN Human Rights Commission. But the mandate is so limited. And has not been at the forefront in dealing with some of the human rights issues at the regional level, like, for instance, the Rohingya issue. That has got to change if we hope and aspire to have a single community where there needs to be a certain standard of governance, whether on the issue of corruption, on the issue of human rights, so that we allow our societies to progress and also to develop to the direction and to the ideals that we like to be in. So again, there has to be a change in the way we do things to make significant advances on these issues.
I'm from Myanmar, teaching in the Bangkok University International College. May I ask you, Asian value and Western value has been controversial during the times of Mahathir and Lee Kuan Yew. How do you define the ASEAN value and the sense of belonging academically? Thank you.
On behalf of the Secretariat of the House of Representatives, my name is Chulalongkorn. I would like to take this auspicious
occasion to ask His Excellency Abhisit Vejjajiva. The first question is, what is the identity of ASEAN? And the second is how to reform the patronage system of the ASEAN. And the third is, what do you think about the civil rights of ASEAN and good governance? Thank you.
I'll try to do that as an overall answer. I think we can use this concept of the ASEAN way to push ahead with this project of finding our identity, our values, and our common destiny. But I would say that we need to avoid two extremes. Number one, we have to make sure that we do not reject universal or global values. Sometimes the Asian values or ASEAN way jargons are used as a way of avoiding some of the standards that we should adhere to in terms of global standards on rights, on certain issues. We mustn't just simply say, oh, we'll do it our way, the Asian way or the ASEAN way, simply to avoid confronting those issues. But on the other hand, I do believe that there are significant cultural, historical and cultural differences between our region and the others, that we also might have to do certain things differently from the other regions. Go back to the Myanmar case. I believe that what was deemed to be the ASEAN way was that we were interested in building trust with the government of Myanmar or Burma, more than wanting to issue public statements, condemnations, alienate, sanctions, or whatever tools that were being used by the rest of the world. So what I'm saying is we have to discover what is unique or what are the strengths or what are the priorities in the region. Just give you a few examples. This region can project itself as a caring region. If you look at the figures, people in this region are, by global standards, donate a lot, give a lot, care a lot whenever there is suffering. Well, why not make that an ASEAN thing? Why not make that a guiding principle about addressing issues like inequalities and so on? Because we are a caring community. That's an example. When we look at issues like climate change, this is one of the regions that is most prone to natural disasters. Well, why not make that a priority as far as the ASEAN integration process is concerned? So there are many aspects that we can identify and begin to develop as something that will become guiding principles of the ASEAN integration process and make them our own. Even what I said before about the way we conduct meetings, well, the informality of meetings can often prove to be the most productive kind of meetings when we resolve some difficult issues. And ASEAN has been able to enjoy what I call ASEAN centrality, some of the key platforms, was that because we were good at building trust, even with the major or superpowers who are often at tension or at conflict with each other. But we earned that trust through being ASEAN, and we should build on these strengths to discover the values and the identity of the community as we forge ahead with the integration process.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Look, I think time is up. I'm really sorry that we would not be able to hear more from you, but let me say that you have left a lot of food for thought for ASEAN at 50, a lot of reflections around the region and the world.